Hey everyone, today I wanted to do a video about performing a personal threat assessment and putting together your preparedness plans. Now in this, I've got a video from the bugoutlocation.com, which is our preparedness courses membership website. And I have a course over there about performing a personal threat assessment. It goes into quite a bit of detail. Today, we're just going to talk about putting together a general plan. Before we get into that video clip though, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that are important when you're putting together your plan. The first one here is don't let fear be your motivator. And there's a difference between fear and being afraid. In general, preparedness is sort of a fearful type thing, right? We're preparing for all this stuff because we want to make sure it doesn't happen to us. But that doesn't mean we have to be afraid while we're doing it. Friends don't let friends prepare afraid, right? So make sure that the higher stress you are, the more afraid you are, the more mistakes you're going to make when you're doing this stuff. Also keep in mind that becoming more prepared builds confidence over time. So that fear that you have about certain disaster situations will start to go away because you know you're taking care of the things that you can take care of. Even just putting together one of these threat assessment plans will give you more confidence. Now you need to act on that plan. Otherwise it's kind of false confidence, but putting together that plan will give you more confidence. And also be prepared to change. Nothing is written in stone. We hear it all the time in the preparedness community. Plan A, have a plan B, have a plan C, and then plan for all of that to go crazy. So just make sure to understand that everything changes. Your personal situation changes over time. The threats that you are assessing at this point could change a few months down the line. So just keep in mind that everything changes over the course of time. Also, if something concerns you, if you prioritize one of these threats pretty high, make sure you research it as much as you can. This is important because those of you that have been doing this for a while know that sometimes as you're researching something or you buy something, you find out later on that you were going down the wrong path with that, or you bought the wrong thing, so you have to adjust course and basically start all over. So the more you can do beforehand, the more you can research and all of that beforehand, the better off you are going to be. Also be mindful of what information that you buy into, because there's a whole lot of information out there these days, and everybody on the internet, everybody's got an opinion and everybody's got their way of doing things. Doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It just may not be the best for you. So kind of like going to the doctor, right? Get that second and third opinion on everything. And this goes into that research as much as you can as well. Also, ignore the haters out there. Like I said, everybody is online these days. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody sits behind a keyboard, so some of them are the one-uppers who always have something better than you, or some people just want to tell you how their plan is better than your plan. Don't listen to all that stuff. You are the only one responsible for your safety and your survival and your family's survival. They can say whatever they want, but it ultimately falls down to you. So make sure that your plan is the best that you feel you need, and is going to make your situation the best that it can. Again, there's a lot of great information out there on the internet, but there's also a lot of bad information. So make sure and pay attention to all of that. Also, when you're doing this personal threat assessment and your preparedness plan in general, make sure to take your personal situation into account, because not everything you read online is going to apply to you or your situation. Now, there are a lot of things in preparedness that are basically the general things, putting together a bug out bag. There's a lot of similarities between everybody's bug out bag. The fire starting stuff, the water filtration stuff, the clothing, all of those things are basically the same. But as you expand out on all of this stuff, your preparedness plan is going to differ from somebody else's because of your current situation. You've got your family size you need to take into account. You've got your location, where you live, what state you live in, what natural disasters are likely. You've got your health, your age, and your budget, which all play a factor in your preparedness plan. So while there are some things that are the basic preparedness needs, your plan is going to change as you dig a little bit deeper and you get a little bit more granular into all of this stuff. All right. Also, the more severe the disaster, the less likely it is. And this is not to say that, say, like, Putin talking about nuclear weapons. That's not to say that it's not possible or an EMP is not possible. What I'm saying is those localized, those smaller, those events closer to home, those are more likely to happen. So is it more likely that Putin launches nuclear missiles, or is it more likely that you get into an accident, a car accident or something like that? In your area, depending on what your natural disaster situation is a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake more likely, or is an EMP more likely? The odds are that that natural disaster is something that you should prepare for before you start thinking about those EMPs. With this, prep locally, then nationally, then globally. And the reason I think this is so important is because all of these things, even if you're thinking about something that's national or globally, eventually it all comes home. So it all ends up a local situation anyway. If there are riots or something going on a national level, you need to think about how that's going to affect you at home in your current situation. And that'll be different depending on where you live or how close to the city you live or how far away from the city you live. Same thing with globally. So in preparedness, if you're always thinking prep locally, prep your individual situation first, eventually you're going to have a pretty good, well-rounded preparedness plan. And you're going to be prepared for those larger scale events, at least the basic stuff. And then you can kind of, again, get a little bit more granular with those and think about what you would do in each situation. So let me go ahead and play this video real quick from the bugoutlocation.com. And like I said, the course over there is a lot more detailed than this, but let me play this real quick.
When planning for a disaster, it's always a good idea to know what you're preparing for and how to do it. Shocker, right? Whether it's an economic collapse or martial law, we all probably know what concerns us the most, but it shouldn't stop there. Attention to detail is critical. Preparing a personal threat assessment will give you a clearer picture about how to proceed and to do it in a way that gives you the best possible chance to survive any disaster that might come your way. The 3 steps of a threat assessment are identifying and prioritizing the threats you might face, assessing the impact those threats could have on you, and finally creating a plan to deal with those threats. Like I said, attention to detail is critical, so let's dive deeper into all 3 of these steps. Alright, the first step is to identify the threats you might face. On the surface, this seems pretty simple. But to formulate a preparedness plan based around these threats, you need to have laser focus. The best way to do this is to start small and work your way up to the bigger threats. You've probably thought about the natural disasters that are possible in your area, but have you thought about a job loss, man-made disasters, the surrounding neighborhoods, your acquaintances and operational security, accidents that could happen to you or your family, unexpected bills or expenses? Along with all of this, it's important to understand whether or not the area you live in is a target. Are there military bases nearby? Are there manufacturing or chemical plants in your area? Are there nuclear plants or anything that terrorists might see as a target around you? Are there roads or highways near you that might become dangerous? For example, if there's a military base nearby, which roads will they most likely use? If people are fleeing the city, which is the safest route to take? Once you've thought about all of these localized threats that could affect you in the short term, you need to assess and prioritize the impact these threats might have. The impact of these threats can not only affect what you prep, some could affect your ability to prep in the first place. A job loss or an accident that decreases your family income could derail even the best laid out preparedness plan. When assessing the impact of these threats, you need to take into account how prepared you really are for an event like this, not how prepared you think you are. In order to become completely prepared, you need to take a look at every possible angle and understand the impact of it. How well stocked are you? What are your family's abilities and weaknesses? How will this affect others that you're surrounded by? How will this affect your ability to continue prepping? How long will this last? Is it short-term or long-term? And what other events will the initial event cause? An automobile accident could cause injury, or an earthquake could cause food or water shortages. Once you've thought about how these disasters might affect you and your family, now it's time to start planning. This is the most important step because without action, even the best laid out plans are worthless. Try to think outside the box when you're making your plan, and remember to focus on the things that will help you reduce your spending while you're becoming more prepared. Here's an example. Preparing for an unexpected job loss could mean stocking up on a few months worth of food, trying to pad your savings account if that's possible, purchasing some gold and silver, learning skills that might help you get a part-time or temporary job, or even talking to your spouse about the possibility of them getting a second job. Once you've completed the general threat assessment plan, you can begin to focus on the larger scale disasters. Think of it like building a house. You might want to focus on the bigger disasters first, but remember, like building a house, you need to build the foundation before you can start building the roof. So let's do a quick recap. Step 1 is identifying and prioritizing the threats you might face. Start by brainstorming and doing a complete mind dump of everything that you can think of and write it down. Don't think too much about these, just write them down. You never know what you might uncover or what's important. Once you have these listed, make a top 10 list and prioritize these threats 1 through 10. Step 2 is assessing the impact those threats could have on you. Assessing the impact of these threats means taking a look at what supplies you have, what supplies you need, what skills you have, what are your limitations financially and physical, and include the entire family in this. What additional threats will the initial threat cause? And finally, creating a plan to deal with those threats. Now that we have all of this information listed out, we can start planning on how to better handle these situations. Start by creating a plan of your highest priority threats and work your way down. And you'll see that as you prepare for one event, you'll become more prepared for the other events on your priority list.
All right, so it may seem a little bit complicated, but it's really not, especially when you think about as you do all of these things with these different threats. A lot of them overlap. So they're going to, food storage, water storage, all of the basic things are going to overlap into each different one. So it's when you start getting down into the weeds with this that you start to individualize each of the different disaster scenarios. I think this is really important these days because it seems like there's 10 different directions that we could be hit by something. So it's important to kind of prioritize those threats and think about them and start preparing for them and get a plan put together, sort of a blueprint of how you're going to do all this stuff. That way you're saving money, you're saving time, you're saving a little bit of sanity as well, and you're going to understand which direction you need to go with this. So you're going to be more organized as well. That's why I like to perform a preparedness threat assessment every 6 months. Maybe you can go a year if you want, but all of this stuff changes, so you've got to make sure and you're staying on top of everything. So at any rate, if anybody has any thoughts about what they do with their personal threat assessment plan or your preparedness plans in general, leave them in the comments below. If you've got information that would be useful to other listeners, that'd be fantastic. But with that, I am done today. So until next time, take care and prepare. We'll talk to you all later.